from the governor's office on our fights for the jobs. Here's a man that knows how important jobs are to this state. He's been a small business owner, a state representative, and is standing with us today. Here is New Mexico's Lieutenant Governor, Mr. John Sanchez.
You know, I can't think of a better place as Lieutenant Governor that I'd rather be than right here in Chaves County today. With you. And I'll tell you why, because as a former state legislator and today as the second highest elected official in the state of New Mexico, there's one thing that's absolutely certain. And what we know in Santa Fe is what we know who butters our bread. We know who the goose that lays the golden egg. It is Southeast New Mexico through your hard work, through the oil and gas industry. You guys You may be asking what a kid from Albuquerque is doing in Southeast New Mexico talking about a lizard. But you know what? Before I'm a state legislator, before I'm a lieutenant governor, you know what? I'm a business guy. And I understand the importance of making a payroll. I understand what it takes to need a job. And I understand what it takes to make jobs. And you know, as Americans and as New Mexicans, we're not looking for a handout. We're looking for a hand up. And in many ways, we're just simply saying, get out of our way. To the federal government, we're taking the state government, get out of our way, let us do what we do best, and that is create jobs. I will tell you that as Lieutenant Governor, I will fight every single day. And when Bill Owens talked about picking a fight and getting up and standing for what we believe is right, those conservative, constitutional values that make this country great, we need to restore that. And as I travel New Mexico and as I've been around the entire country, I can tell you this. There's no harder working people than the people of Southeast New Mexico. You guys know what it takes to do the job. We're here talking about an endangered species, but the real potential endangered species are the jobs and the workers right here in New Mexico. We're going to fight for that. We're going to fight for it. Let me just say in closing that we are committed in this new administration in Santa Fe. We went up there to do a job. We weren't there to make friends. We weren't there to be nice. We were there to clean it up Santa Fe, right? To end the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. We understood that it was the pit rule, it was the regulations that were killing the oil and gas industry. You know what? We're going to do everything in our power to continue. We understand that through this amazing natural resources we have here in the state of New Mexico, and allowing the greatest resources, which are you out there, to give you every opportunity to do the job. I want to let you know that the state of New Mexico will have a place and a voice when it comes to this particular issue. Your voice will be heard. We will represent you. We will fight for you. We stand with you. We won't quit until the job is done. I want to say God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. That was pretty inspiring there. Our next speaker is the Executive Director of the Citizens Alliance for Responsibility. She's an author of 19 books, mostly about energy, communication, and Christian living. She believes in our way of life, and saving jobs is what she believes in. Now, also, her op-ed was published today in the Roswell Daily Record. Help me welcome Miss Marita Noon.
Thank you so much. It's great to see such a wonderful crowd here today to care about our jobs in New Mexico. I want to ask you a couple questions. How many of you, probably from history books, because by looking at the crowd, most of you are not old enough, but how many of you remember the idea of homesteading? Do you remember what homesteading is about? Some of you do. Do any of you have family that homesteaded land? Some of you do. I have a book in front of me, and in this book it talks about historical places, and it says, it was April 1879, nearly 100 years ago, that Dr. Adolphus Noon, who had served with the Union forces in the Civil War, chose to settle in this area. My family roots homesteaded land in the southwestern part of this country. Now, do you know what that was different then from now? At that time, we had federal government. We had federal employees who encouraged growth. We had federal government that encouraged expansion. We had government that wanted people to grow, to be successful, and to expand. But you know what? That was 100 years ago. And things have changed between then and now. Now, I personally talked to Sharna Lefton yesterday. She's going to be over there to take your comments tonight. And I hope each and every one of you will go there. But I called her yesterday and I talked to her while she was in the Dallas airport on her way to Midland. And I talked to her about the article she had in the paper that said that there was no data to support that jobs would be lost because of the listing of the lizard. I asked her about that, and she said, well, there is no data. There's no study one way or the other.
Why not?
Well, you know what? We don't need a study because you know what? We have history. And history tells us that the Endangered Species Act is more about control than it is about the critters. Now, Ronnie, who spoke before me, he was more gracious than I am because he called them his drunken friends. I like to call them the watermelons because they are green on the outside, like environmentalism. But when you study what they do day in and day out, like I do, you have to say to yourself, why are they doing this? They're going to ruin America. And when you look closely at what they're doing, you realize that that is their goal. Because they are red on the inside, like neo-communism, neo-socialism, or boils down to just control. If you did not get a Smash the Watermelon bumper sticker, my friend Paula will get them for you. She's got a bag full of them there. Energy Makes America great bumper stickers and a pen that says Smash the Watermelons, and it is, of course, green on the outside, but red on the inside. Now remember, you said, why haven't they done a study? And I said to you, they don't need to do a study because you know what? We have history on our side. We have the history of the spotted owl that was listed as an endangered species 20 plus years ago. And you know what that spotted owl listing did? It did not protect the spotted owl. There are still less spotted owls now than there were 20 plus years ago. Spotted owls have been found in places that they aren't supposed to like because they're only supposed to like this certain kind of trees. But you know what that endangered species listing did? It killed the logging industry. It killed the entire logging industry of the Pacific Northwest. In Oregon, it used to be that 50% of the harvest came from federal lands. Now in Oregon, less than 10% comes from federal lands. We don't need to do a study because we have history. Here in southern New Mexico, in the Gila Forest, we have people that have ranched that land in one family for more than 100 years. But you know what has happened because of endangered species listings? They're not allowed to have mechanized equipment on that land, on those federal lands that they use for grazing. On that land, they have had to take mules, 250 loads of concrete on mules to hand mix to repair. We have other cases where mules are mandated by our federal government. And not only are the mules mandated, but those mules are mandated to be fed certified weed-free hay. We are in the worst economic crisis in our lifetimes. Do you think our federal government should be worrying about certified weed-free hay? This book I showed you earlier, the title of this book is Ghost Towns and Historical Haunts in Arizona. If we do not stop this endangered species listing for the lizard, for the lesser prairie chicken, and whatever else they come up with down the road, all of southeastern New Mexico is going to become like the Pacific Northwest and be full of ghost towns. Thank you.
Hey, did you guys like that? You betcha. Thank you. That's Marita Noon right there, folks. Before we go any further, the Chamber of Commerce are going to be, at the end of the rally here, going to be handing out these flyers that are just packed full of information, so make sure everybody picks one of these up. Our next speaker, he knows this lizard issue as well as anyone. He represents many of the companies that would be impacted by the listing of the lizard. He's here to tell us why it's so important to get involved in order to keep these good jobs in southeast New Mexico. From the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association, help me welcome Mr. Steve Hinkie.
I think I'm seeing lizards in my sleep over the last 2 weeks, and it's just very encouraging to me to see this great turnout. It fills me with enthusiasm to continue the fight over this issue. And I'm telling you, it's time that we stand up and say no, we've had enough to the environmental extremists, and it's time that the Fish and Wildlife Service got some backbone and told them no as well. They are abusing the process. The Wild Earth Guardians and the group in Tucson, Citizens for Biological Diversity, have flooded the Fish and Wildlife Service with 1,200 petitions for listing across the United States. The sand dune lizard is one of them. The Fish and Wildlife Service can't cope with that. Those folks are winning lawsuits, and the federal government is using taxpayer money to fund their attorneys. It's time to stop that insanity and say no. I make no mistake about the agenda of the environmental extremists. They want to remove logging and mining and ranching and oil and gas development from the land. And they're using the Endangered Species Act as the tool to achieve that objective, and we need to tell them to stop. And we need to tell the Fish and Wildlife Service tonight to get some backbone and go to court with them. And if they were interested in lizards, they'd get out of the courtroom and come to the coffee pot with the citizens of southeast New Mexico and put their money on the table like the ranching community has done and the oil and gas industry has done to protect habitats, to fund studies, to ensure the preservation of the lizard. But that's not their agenda. They don't want to work cooperatively. They want us off the land. They want our jobs. And it's time to say enough. No, we'll either cooperate with you or we're going to fight you tooth and nail in the courtroom. And the Oil and Gas Association will be there to fight.